Hello and welcome to the Gooner Ramble podcast. I'm your host Giles, and today we'll be discussing the outcomes of Saturday's Time for Change protest. The results of it. Was it a good thing? Was it a bad thing? Should it be carried on? If so, how should it be carried on? The kind of pressure it can apply on the hierarchy. Are there different ways of applying pressure to the hierarchy? Joining me today to discuss this is regular Mark King. Mark, how are you, sir?
I'm good, thanks, Giles.
Good, man. And also we've got FK. Right, FK, thanks for coming on, mate.
No worries, man. Pleasure.
Right, so Mark, you were very much involved in the organisation of this. I know obviously the three of the main fan groups had a role in it, but you were very much the man on the ground in sort of driving the organisation of this protest. Just for those that aren't aware of, the reasons for it, why did it happen, and what was why did the fan groups use that particular wording?
Firstly, mate, whilst I realise that I might have done a lot of stuff about it in terms of speaking to people, I don't want to try and take credit for everything. There was a lot of organisation from all the guys at Black Scarf, from the guys at the Arsenal Supporters Trust, and from Red Action, and also from the Gooner fanzine as well. So let me make sure that everyone knows that all those people all worked together to put it together.
My apologies.
No, mate, not at all, mate. The reason we went for that wording is, look, we all, this discussion had been going on for a while about what to do. We all agreed that something needed to be done. This has been a season where we've seen Leicester and Spurs battling it out for the title, and all the other big clubs falling away. And City and us sort of like really the only ones that have tried to stay in touch at the top, but both of us have sort of been too inconsistent to mount a proper challenge. And once we went through that really horrible period of losing those games, losing to Barcelona, which we all kind of generally accepted was going to happen, but losing away to United's youth team, losing at home to Swansea, and then going out of the cup really meekly to Watford, I think people then knew something. The tide started to turn quite badly against the board, and and against Wenger, because it seems like you can't really separate the two that well. It just doesn't work for people. So we decided we wanted to do something that was respectful. We're not maniacs as much as you see people banging on about the BSM being old school and EDL and all that. That's just lazy, cheap people being stupid idiots, yeah. But we wanted to do something that was respectful, and in coordination across the three groups and the Gooner, we decided that we'd go for this time for change, because that's what we believe it is. It's time for change because things have got stale. So we thought we'd go with that. It's not offensive. We're not having a digging out any one particular, and then each of the groups could do their own thing. The Gooner fanzine, part of their new cover, was about time for change. AST released a statement. Redaction did plenty of tweets and had something on their website, and we had something on our website as well. So that was the reason why. We just think it's time now. That there is a lot of people that say that we need to make changes, and we just thought, well, it's now time to try and start getting some momentum behind that.
FK, what are your thoughts on when you first heard about the protest, the stuff that happened throughout the week, and then seeing it at yesterday's game? What was your thoughts? Were you in favour of what they were doing, or sort of not in favour? Where did you stand on it?
Well, I'm glad you asked it in two sort of parts to that question, Giles. So, first of all, before I answer the question, as a match-going fan and as someone just like Mark and yourself, you pay to go to games. I have to respect the right of any individual wanting to express their own opinion. And Mark's absolutely spot on. I don't think it was anything distasteful, certainly not in the ground. And it's not the first time that banners have been sort of unfurled at games. There's been other banners, and they have been respectful, in terms of the wording that they use and in terms of the message they're trying to get across. To answer your first question, going into the game, I have to say I was a little bit anxious because, again, for anyone who's not followed me or anyone who doesn't know my stance, you guys know more than most that I am and pro Arsene Wenger. I wouldn't like to see him walk away from the club at this current moment. I certainly don't want to see him hounded out. So going into the game, I was a bit anxious about it because I was just wondering how volatile, I guess, the atmosphere could have been, or how toxic or how unpleasant it could have turned into. Because what I've realised is that over the last sort of few weeks or months, depending on, it's more a reflection of your following on Twitter, but depending on the people you engage with, there is a lot of noise and there's a lot of there can be a lot of unpleasantries sometimes, and we've all been guilty of it. You see tweets all the time that being disrespectful to one another, being disrespectful to people at the club, being disrespectful to players, and so be it. So there seemed to be a big momentum gathering, and on the Friday I remember tweeting saying that, look guys, I totally respect the fact that people want to protest, and good luck to them, but it's just not something that I personally wanted to get involved in. A, because I didn't see the need to change the manager. The board is a different question. B, I think the 90 minutes are sacrosanct and they should be support the team. It's a bit like, I don't know, going to visit your mum on a Sunday and she's spent the day cooking, and then after the first course you kind of criticise that, then after the main course you kind of criticise her, and it's just a bit, you don't criticise during the meal. It's a poor example, and it's the first thing that's just come into my head. You've dragged me out of bed this morning, but. So for me, you protest all you like, you do it after the game, before the game, or whatever. So I was a little bit sort of anxious. That's probably the first bit. The second bit, how it actually went. To my surprise, it wasn't as strong as I thought it would be. I don't know what I was expecting. I certainly wasn't expecting it to be thousands and thousands of people holding up their bits of paper, but. It was nowhere near as many as I thought it'd be. And I remember speaking to Mark after the game, saying that it actually, again, you won't believe this, but it wasn't me who started the One Arsene Wenger chant. But to hear that as a response from certainly Block 8, Block 9, Block 10, the vast majority of people kind of just, joining in, that was quite surprising. Because again, I'll be honest with you, I don't want Arsene Wenger to sign a new contract. But equally, I don't want him to be hounded out. But to hear that from the majority of the match-going fans, that was quite something. And that was an equal surprise, but a pleasant surprise. And so the protest itself, I don't know whether it worked in the game, but it's really important though to acknowledge that actually, whether or not the protest worked inside the stadium during the game. People have become aware of it, and you've got the media coverage. It was covered in the newspapers. Other fans are talking about it. Arsene Wenger came out after the game and he sort of acknowledged that I think he even went so far as saying I'm sorry I can't please 100% of the fans all the time and all that kind of stuff. So it hasn't gone unnoticed. So in that case, in that sense, in that regard, the protest has certainly done something. But and whether or not the club listened to the fans or not in future, I don't know. But I don't know if the actual on the day activity was as successful as they'd have maybe hoped. So that's my view on it. I mean, people are entitled to their views. I personally didn't want to take part in it. I don't think people should do it during the game. But I do think as little as it, a couple of hundred people or 500 people, 600 people in a capacity of 50,000-ish kind of people, if it didn't work in that regard, but it's people are aware of it. So in that, in another aspect, it has worked.
Mark, FK touches on the issue of it not being that well in his eyes, and a lot of people that were watching from their armchairs, in their eyes, the protest wasn't that successful. As a one-off, that may or may not be the case, but are you encouraged by the fact that there was a call to action? There was a protest made, and this is not the be all. It doesn't stop here, basically.
No, I mean, there'll always be, there was always going to be some debate between both sides of the argument as to how successful it was in itself. I mean, what I would say is if you look at the stadium, the last two games we've had, there's an awful lot of people that are not attending. So, maybe those people all had a barbecue to go to on Saturday, but why are so many people not turning up? That's one aspect you need to think about. In terms of the people who held up the banners, I mean, I would say, when have we ever had anything like this before? This is the first time we have asked people to take any kind of sheet, banner, poster, whatever you want to call it, into the stadium and hold it up to express your dissatisfaction. Now, I wouldn't say the numbers were that great. I'm not going to, I haven't watched the game on telly. It was bad enough watching it live, and I can only see from where I was what I can see. Yeah, so I wouldn't say that there were huge numbers doing it, but I would say that for the first time, for people to actually feel at the stadium confident enough or angry enough about the situation to actually hold out that banner and show what they think when all around them are people who can then go, oh, hold on a minute, this guy's protesting, this guy wants change. Yeah, it's a brave thing for those people to do. And I mean, we've heard a few stories about problems inside with people holding up the banners and getting some stick, and I'm sure conversely there was some to and fro, as you know well, Giles, from our own personal experience there. But so I would suggest that people need to think about how many times before have we seen people holding up banners and feeling confident enough or angry enough about the situation to do it inside the stadium. How many times have you seen any of the Get Cronky Out or the Thanks for the Memories Arson banners inside the Emirates? Away games, yes, but inside the Emirates, I think this is a first time, and this is a start, and this is what this is where you've got to try and start protesting, and you've got to get some momentum going, and I think the momentum will carry on. There's only 2 games left now, one away, one at home, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in these 2 games. And I think anybody who's kind of smugly thinking, well, they're not going to bother doing that again, they may be in for a pleasant surprise or an unpleasant surprise, depending on where they're standing.
Do you think the snap judgment was, from what I could see, was how it failed? Most of the people don't want change or aren't in favour of the campaign. But when you talk to some, match going fans, I got the impression that some of them do want change, but they just weren't happy with the way it was shown or displayed on the day, like the 12th minute and 78th minute. A lot of people think that the match is sacred, and you either protest before or after the game. So do you think people have got that consensus wrong, in that just because many thousands didn't hold up the banner, that means that they're not in favour of change?
No, I think you raise a very good point. There are people. I mean, look, when we had, when people say, oh, there weren't that many banners held up, yeah, so it was a failure, mate. Hello, it was all over. It was on BBC, it was on Sky Sports. We had interviews on TalkSport. Part of it is the publicity to say that things are wrong. That's what the whole thing is about. Is about the publicity, and it's not just about Arsenal can't go, we've got 7 million Twitter followers, and then just look at how many of the 57, not even that, 48,000 crowd of Arsenal supporters held up banners. It's about that publicity. Now, a lot of people there now, having seen what happened Saturday, some of them might feel, actually, you know what, next time I'm going to hold up my banner. Conversely, some of them might go, oh no, that didn't work too well, I'm not going to hold up a banner, or look at all the grief that was caused around me, I'm not going to do it. And that's a personal thing, and we've never said anything to try and force people to do it. It's completely their choice whether they want to do it or they don't want to do it. So absolutely no problem. But I think it's a good start, and we'll carry on from here, because people, the whole thing about the people singing One Arsene Wenger is really, really interesting. That heard it before this season much? Not really.
No, I don't think so.
I can see why people did it, because obviously there's a lot of people that see this whole movement as about Wenger. It's not about Wenger. I have my personal opinion, as you know, but from the point of view of the fan groups, it was all about time for change at the club overall, in terms of the board, because the board drives the manager to succeed. It's what we keep saying. The board drives the manager to succeed. That's why so many other managers get sacked. Yeah, Liverpool, Brendan Rodgers saw an opportunity to get Klopp, sacked Rodgers off, get Klopp in. regardless of what you think about how Klopp's doing, one cup final, one Europa League semi-final, is proof of the right thing they did there. So I just think that lost my train of thought now. I just think that it shows that people do want change, but they're not convinced of it. The one Arsene Wenger thing, good luck to them. If they feel that that's the way to react to it, and there's always going to be people who support the manager. We understand that, but like I say, did it get sung? Has it been sung much this season at all? And don't forget, when Arsene Wenger on Friday quite easily could have killed off any sort of like real talk about the protest from his point of view, and just said he was at his press conference to talk about Arsenal versus Norwich. He didn't. He slagged off all the fans. And what I want to do is remind all those fans, all of you who was singing One Arsene Wenger, he was talking about you as well. So when he's talking about toxic atmospheres or hostile climates, he's talking about you as well. So you're going to sing One Arsene Wenger. Let's see you singing it at Aston Villa at home in 2 weeks' time. Let's see you singing it at Manchester City away next week. And I'll be very interested to see how much we get Arsene Wenger in the future, because we ain't had it much this season.
FK, you mentioned that Wenger in the post-match pressure made an apology to the fans of sorts. Do you think he could have been better served doing that? I mean, he really, sort of comes out and makes an apology to the fans. He's very sort of ebullient about, the players, the staff, the this, the that, the club. Do you think if he'd have come out in the week and said, look, 5 years ago I was given a contract, I had to keep the banks happy, but I'm conscious that the fans aren't happy, and we're trying everything we can to do something about that. Do you think if he'd have come out earlier in the week and said something like that, bang, it would have sort of like almost, if not killed the momentum, but dissuaded a lot of fans from sort of like, going for him as much as they have done since?
Well, look, to be honest, I think the divide is so irreconcilable now that it doesn't matter what Arsene Wenger does. I think those who dislike him and want him out will want him out. I mean, he could, when we were doing well this season, when we were top of the league, everyone was saying that Arsenal win the league only because everybody else has been rubbish. So if we were to win the league next year, you can imagine everybody sort of belittling that, and they'd want him out anyway. But going back to Arsene Wenger, I've got to say, Giles, I don't think he helps himself at all. I think he sometimes, post-match press conferences, you can sometimes feel for him, because in the heat of the moment, you're going to say something. But when it's a calm, calculated opportunity to say something in a pre-match post-conference where someone like Mark Ganella, the Director of Communications, must be briefing him to say, look, this is the activity that's been going on social media. This is what you should be expecting. These are the sorts of things you want to say when you're prompted with question A, B, and C. That's his job. That's what he's paid for. He needs to be telling Wenger these things, and Wenger needs to be a bit smarter. He needs to be much more savvy and show a bit more empathy, because supporter sentiment over the last 2-3 years has been general frustration, has been, there is a time coming where there's a time has come where, it's almost civil war. So Arsene Wenger doesn't help himself, and he could have said, Giles, he could have said something like, what, and it shouldn't have just been last week. It could have been 2-3 months back when we got knocked out by Watford. He could have come out and said, look, I've got this horribly wrong this season. We had a few tough years. Yes, we invested. Yes, we won a couple of FA Cups. This was the year that I thought we'd win the league, but I've got it horribly wrong. We couldn't find the player that we really wanted to buy. Just, come out and just say that, I've made a mistake, but we want to dust ourselves off. We're desperately gutted. We want to go again next season, in which will be my final year at Arsenal. I'm not sure that would get people like Mark back on board with him, but I think what I do think would help, and Mark, you may disagree or agree here, but what I think might help is if Wenger came out and said, I've got X number of years to run on my contract left, or I will hang up my managerial boots, so to speak, at some point. I think there are a lot of Wenger outs people who might accept that and think, right, there's an end goal. We know where this is going to go. Let's just get behind him. I mean, I'd like to think that would happen. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that a bit more humility from Wenger wouldn't go amiss, and I've criticised him for that a few times. Like, he just does not help himself when he's asked certain questions. But to be honest with you, Giles, I'm not sure what it achieved. I think it's just beyond repair. The other thing I would say just on this question is that you got to remember that this is a guy obviously who's been at the club for 19, 20 years. He's dedicated the majority of his working life to us. And I know he gets paid a fortune, but there's no manager that works for free anywhere in the world. He gets paid a fortune, but he's done a really good job for most of that tenure. And this is the first season where you can actually, without question, label it as a failed campaign. It's commonly accepted that we had 6 or 7 years of tough years post Emirates move. I get that. It was the Cities and the Chelseas coming into the game kind of distorted all that, even though we didn't predict it, but it happened. And then we thought 2013 would be the year we pushed on, won a couple of FA Cups. But this was the year, Giles. This was the year that we should have gone on and won the Premier League. And to go out to Watford at home, to go out to Sheffield Wednesday, and to obviously have your annual defeat to Barcelona, that hurts. I'm as gutted as anybody else. And my final point is, just because there are fans who didn't hold up the paper, or just because there are fans who don't want change, that doesn't mean that they don't want the club to succeed. That doesn't mean that, just because I don't support the protest during the game, and just because I don't have a Wenger out banner on my, profile or bio or whatever, doesn't mean that I don't want Arsenal to win. I want Arsenal to win the league as much as anybody. I want Arsenal to finish above Tottenham. Like Mark, we were joking about it yesterday. Even if it's a little bit of pride, I want that to happen. I don't want us to see us get knocked out to Watford, but, it's football. It happens. And this season we haven't helped ourselves. We've got a lot of money sitting in the bank with a couple of big gaping holes in our team. And it's not even about personnel. There are tactical issues, there are mentality issues, there are various other things. But, to hound out one of your greatest ever, it doesn't sit well with me.
Mark, and I'll come to you, Mark, and then back to FK. Do you feel, there's I've been talking to some people, and some people before the game were saying that the actual words, the banner, is actually pretty opaque. They're not sure what are you asking for. Is it Wenger? Is it Kroenke? Is it the board? Is it all three? People seem to feel that it wasn't distilled enough. You were sort of like covering too many bases, and therefore it sort of lost its the potency of its intent. Maybe. What do you say to that?
Well, to be honest, I'd say you're damned if you do and damned if you don't, to be fair. I think if you have banners that say Arsene Wenger get out, people who agree that there's something wrong at the club but still have the respect for the manager, even if they maybe feel that he has lost his way. FK's an example there. I think you can see that FK's beginning to sort of think that Wenger hasn't done what he needed to do this year, but he's never going to hold something up that says Wenger out, and I can understand that. Then if we do, if we made it specifically about the board, that's great. That our number one enemy at the Black Scarf is the board, because the Kroenke is the owner of the club. So at the end of the day, he is at the top of the train, and he is the one that will lead everything that happens underneath him. Yeah, it's him that will drive the manager to succeed or not. It's him that sets the targets that Arsene Wenger has to achieve. Now, if those targets are, finishing the top four, because that's what keeps us not only in the Champions League money, but it means that we're a Champions League club, and therefore from our sponsorship deals, that works. That's not really what the aim of the club is. And the man has come out in the press and stated that if he wanted to buy a club to win trophies, he wouldn't be buying a football club. That's not what he's about. You only got to look at his US sports teams and listen to anyone who knows anything about what he does with those US sports teams. What his interest is, and it's not about sporting success, it's about commercial success. That's all the man is interested in. So you could focus on that, but then a lot of people then would be saying, yeah, but Stan Kroenke's not the one who buys the players, trains the players, gives them the tactics, motivates them to play, makes the changes during games, etc., etc. So, where does the blame lie? In my personal opinion, it lies in both problems. You know, we have a board that is not interested in sporting success. In fact, actually, I don't know why I even refer to them as a board, because basically they're all just puppets for Kroenke. They do what they're told. Yeah, they don't really, you know, they have no real connection to the fans, and they just do what they're told. Ivan Gazidis has vanished. He's like the Scarlet Pimpernel. I really don't understand where he has gone when the last few weeks have been pretty bad, and he's not come out and said anything. So I don't really care about them. It's about the owner. So the owner is the huge problem, because actually, if you had an owner who wanted to drive sporting success, they'd pressure the manager. You know, an example of that is Abramovich. Abramovich, for what you might think there are other reasons why he bought Chelsea, but from my purposes, he bought Chelsea because he wanted a football club that would go and win trophies. And it's hard to argue that he hasn't achieved that. And he has his managers, and if they don't achieve that, he gets rid of them. Now, I wouldn't want us to go to that extreme where we were like changing managers every couple of years just because it doesn't work out. But I do want an owner who's actually going to say, to appoint a manager and tell him what the targets are. And if he doesn't make those targets, if he's not achieving them, or he doesn't look like he's even actually doing everything he needs to do to try and achieve them, he's going to get rid of him and get someone in who will.
On that point, actually, Giles, if I can just add,
sure.
I mean, under normal circumstances, at any other club if we just take this season into you know, just look at it, the season on its own, if that was a club that wanted to win the league, and we finished below Leicester and Spurs, and we didn't, you know, getting dumped out to Watford and whatnot, any other club, any other year, any other circumstance, the manager would have been sacked. And I think, did we do a podcast about a month ago, two, 3 months ago, where we talked about this? And I remember telling Mark that should we finish below Leicester and Spurs, and should we get dumped out of the FA Cup, he would deserve the sack. Whether you know, irrespective of how much you love him, irrespective of how much you hate him, whether you want him to stay, don't want him to stay, whatever, that's all irrelevant. Based on actual outcome, based on results, he would deserve the sack. So I think there's a lot of sentiment behind fans wanting him to stay, which is understandable, given that he's given so much. I think there's also an issue of, all right, we've missed the boat with Guardiola and Klopp and Ancelotti and co. So there is a case of just saying, right, well, we need to plan carefully about who we want to bring in. And just before anyone kind of is thinking, well, why didn't we bring in Klopp, 2 years ago, or Ancelotti 2 years ago? Well, 2 years ago, we just bought Ozil and Sanchez, and we won our first trophy after 9 years, and we won another trophy, second trophy in 2 years. And I think the club, whether rightly or wrongly, they thought that Arsene Wenger could lead us to the league title this year. Now, at this point, if you were really firm and you were very sort of brutal as a businessman, then Mark's spot on. Kroenke should be saying to Wenger, well, look, what on earth has happened? And you're walking a tightrope. If Arsene, if I was being serious, you'd be out of a job right now. I can't imagine that conversation's ever going to happen at Arsenal. So there's one fault. But I think now, if we're going into, sorry Mark, I'm taking up your time, but if we are going into Arsene Wenger's final year, whether he wins the league or not, I think there should be no talk of a new contract. I think the divide is too much. I think it's unsustainable for the club, and it's unhealthy. There's a growing group of people who don't enjoy going to games anymore. Even as a pro Wenger, it's not enjoyable going to games anymore because of the divide, and it's not healthy. It's just not good. So I think the club needs to start succession planning now. They need to start thinking, right, they need to start identifying 2, 3, 4 upcoming managers in Europe, start tapping them up, start having conversations with them, start showing them, their plans about a project post Wenger. And I think that would be a grave mistake. I just can't see it happening though, guys. I cannot imagine for 1 minute that Gazidis and Kroenke are sitting at home thinking, right, what happens when Wenger leaves? And it wouldn't surprise me if he was given a 1 or a 2 year extension either.
Yeah, I agree with that. The reason why I asked you guys that question is because for me, I think the problem lays with the board, and you could say, Mark, rather the problem lays, consequently, the problem lays at Stan Kroenke's door. We all three sat together in that AGM in October, and we listened to Keswick take the mickey out of us, refusing to answer questions about spurious payments and diversity at board level and so on and so forth. And I came out of there feeling really, really unvalued. Not undervalued, but actually unvalued. by those people at the at that in those positions at the club. And I wonder if more people probably would have got behind it if it was sort of pointed or directed more at the board level than this sort of all-encompassing take make of it what you will, sort of kind of a change strapline. I don't know what you think about that, Mark, but I mean, your own personal opinion, like to be sat there together at the AGM in October and they took the mickey out of us. Did you not think?
Yeah, but that's pretty standard, I mean, I mean, just to try and sort of not correct you, but just to point out, Giles, when we released the Time for Change, anybody who went on the Black Scarf website would have seen that there were basically 7 bullet points to what this was about. 6 of them were about the board and the owner, and 1 of them was about the manager. Yeah, so it was predominantly about the board, because as I say, the rot starts at the top, and it's the owner that drives the club for sporting success or commercial success. Now, when you go to an AGM and you see that you get treated with such disdain, and let's not forget that when we saw some of the patronising and condescending comments that Chips was making, that's not just to a fan, that's to a shareholder. These are people who have paid out. Now, let's not forget, what's a share worth at the moment, FK? A minimum of about £14,000.
Yeah.
£14,000 for 1 share. So these people, they've invested money in the club, and yet they're a fan and an investor, and they're still being spoken down to as if they are it's a necessary evil that we have to go through this AGM and invite some of you along and put up with your impolite questions. And you're going to ask me about the £3 million again. Well, I'm just going to fudge that off again. It's disgraceful. There is no other business in the world, if they ran an AGM like that would actually survive. They wouldn't do it. It's only because it's football. Football must be the most singular thing in the world that just makes up its own rules, that doesn't have to abide by other rules of anything else, business, behaviour, anything, from the fans as well, from what we've seen this weekend too. I'm sure we'll come on to. Yeah, so it's no surprise to me that they don't care whatsoever about the fans. And people will all say, well, there's no point protesting because, what's the point? Kroenke's never there, blah, blah, blah. Well, you know what? You can't just give up. You can't just give up and say, oh, there's no point. Let's just, just sit down and sit on your hands and just let it roll. Sit at the Emirates and watch the same thing happening every season. I mean, we all get, we all wanted the 3 points. I told you what my ideal scenario for Saturday was, but at the end of the game, it was for 3 points for Arsenal, because that's never in doubt. And for the whole game, support the team, but just for 2 1-minute sections, we're saying hold the banner up. It's hardly divisive. What makes me laugh as well, just another point I wanted to make, was that we're holding a banner up for 1 minute in the first half, 1 minute in the second half, and people are saying that we're divisive. What made me laugh was at half time, when the players are going off the pitch, they're getting booed. They're getting booed off, and they're not getting booed off by the people holding the banners up. That's the other people booing. Yeah, when Wenger is taking off Iwobi to bring on Welbeck, there's people booing because he's taking Iwobi off, I think was the issue. But they're booing that. Yeah, and people say that we're having a go. We're divisive. I doubt the players stopped on 12 minutes and started running around going, oh, hello, look, let me count them banners, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're not doing that. They don't notice that. I tell you what, they hear the booing. So, I just, the hypocrisy of that just cracks me up. But the AGMs and the board, they don't care. They're so unconnected. One of the points we made was lack of football people on the board. They do not understand how you can deal with fans in a better way. And FK covered it earlier when he said about Wenger and what Ganella should be, cluing him up on. God knows how that happened. I mean, that was just a nightmare. I mean, I was quite happy he did it, because anybody who was on a tipping point there probably thought, you know what? Actually, now I agree with the protest, because if Wenger's going to blame all the fans for the problems of this season, he really has lost the plot. But they don't care because there's no football people on the board, and they don't really care about the fans other than the fact that they'll come in and pay their money.
Okay. Let's move on to fan behaviour. We all believe that every fan has a right to express their views in a respectful manner, in a non-violent manner. On Saturday, Mark, we saw a photo of blood spilt in the terrace. Apparently, a fan holding the banner was punched by somebody else, and then around the ground, I've heard of people singing "One Arsene Wenger" were abused or punched by people holding banners or who wanted time for change. Yes, that day, Mark, I was sitting next to you and Clive, and that minute went past, and I turned to Clive and I said to him, I'm very saddened by what I see, from the terraces. It just made me feel really bad. And I said to you, Mark, I'm not sure I'm going to go back again this season. It was, for me, it's quite heartbreaking to see it. And I don't know what you think about fan behaviour and whatnot, and why people should take that line of action in terms of violence and abusing. Can you explain to us, you personally, from your own personal experiences, what you think about that whole situation?
Well, I mean, not that it really matters, but I think that the guy that got a clump was actually because he was complaining about people holding the banner, but that's beside the point. We always said, look, it's a peaceful protest. We made sure that the banner was inoffensive. As far as I think, it's a fairly decent statement. It's saying, making a statement about it's time for change. It's not being pointed at anyone in particular. It's not slagging anyone off. It's a nice statement that we felt worked well, and we wanted a peaceful protest. We don't want people getting the ump about it. Obviously, you get a crowd of nearly 50,000 Arsenal fans. It's a Saturday evening game, plenty of time for drinking. Emotions are going to be high at any football match. Already this season we've seen fighting and scrapping amongst Arsenal fans over this situation. So the fact that there may have been one or two incidents at the ground, it doesn't surprise me. You're never going to stop all of it. You can't do it, because it's down to how people behave. If that's how they behave, that's how they behave. There's not much you can do about it. I mean, sitting next to me, that after the first protest minute, there was a bloke stood up a row and a few seats down from us, and he started slagging off the people holding up the banners. And and unfortunately, I sort of bit back and had a go at him back to say, what's the problem? There's don't come out, because he made a ridiculous statement. So I just said to him, what are you talking about, mate? You're talking rubbish and that. So there's never any chance that I don't think either of us were gonna take it any further than that. But emotions are high, because this is football. This is football. This is a passion for people. Yeah, this matters to people, and they care about this more than a lot of other things in their life outside of their families. I know for me, I said it earlier this week, outside of my family, Arsenal is the biggest thing in my life and always has been. It has been for 40 years. I can't see that changing. I know that there are lots and lots of people who have walked away from the club, walked away from going to the matches because of what's happened in football in general, but specifically at Arsenal over the last sort of 10 years, because of the way the game has changed, because of the way the money has taken over, and because also they feel that they're being taken the piss out of by the board at Arsenal. So there is a lot of passion involved. We would never, none of the fan groups would ever want to cause any trouble like that. We want people to be able to express their opinion against the club, and for people to accept that that's their opinion, as long as you do it in the right way. Accept that that's your opinion and you're allowed it. And if you want to give your counter opinion, you want to stand up and sing One Arsene Wenger, that's completely up to you, and feel free to do that as well.
FK, coming over to you. There's been a lot of To me, it seems like there's been more this season, more infighting this season than there has been in previous seasons. I don't know how you see it, but I know you go home and away, more than I do. But what's your feelings on the whole thing?
It's horrible. I mean, what have we become? We've become a club that has become so consistent in terms of performance that we're getting frustrated because we just can't get to that take that final leap and push up the league table by 1 or 2 positions. And as a result of that, we've got split opinions, we've got fans abusing each other, we've got fans sending horrific abuse to players, to the manager, screaming obscenities. We've got, these celeb sort of fans, if you like. I think that's what the modern fans calling them, YouTube channels about, really vocally expressing hatred for individuals at the club. We've got infighting, like you say. It's all become so poisonous. But what I must add, that the majority of people are actually good people. The majority of our fans are generally well behaved. I think there's a lot of noise from big characters because of their frustration, and rightly so. You can understand that. I don't think people do themselves any favors when they start getting abusive, when they start swearing, when they start chanting songs of wanting the managers to die and all that kind of stuff. That kills any credibility that any individual has, and that's not aimed at Mark or the group of people that have pushed for this protest, because again, I think the majority of people who protested are probably just your regular fans who just want the club to do well. But like anything, gents, it just takes 1 or 2 idiots to completely tarnish the reputation of the greater good. So yeah, with regard to going to games, Giles, it's not fun. I mean, it probably has been the worst this season because people's expectations naturally will go up after 17, 18 years of top 4, and then you win back-to-back trophies and you finally got a really good squad. There's going to be disappointment. You're top of the league December the 2nd, and all of a sudden you're 10, 13 points behind Leicester 3-4 months later. So the frustration is going to be natural, and you can understand that, but it does boil over. Going to home games isn't fun because the moment you start cheering something, you get called out for, or the moment someone starts jeering a misplaced pass, you give it back to them, and it's not about the team and the game anymore. It's more about one-upmanship. It's more about trying to score points off each other. It's more about who's smarter on Twitter responses and who can get the most retweets. And that's how I feel about it. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but people often talk about Groundhog Day, but it's funny that that is exactly what Twitter's like. Every single morning, I'll wake up. I'm not as active as I used to be, but I'll log on in the mornings, and you'll see anti-Wenger this, anti-Wenger that, and you'll see the usual suspects. One Arsene Wenger for life, this, that, and the other, and it's just tedious. It's just, it begins to just like grate, and you start losing interest in not only watching your team at games, you start losing interest in going to the game. And I used to get to the game 2 hours before kickoff. You'd go to your local, you'd just journey in with your mates. You'd be bantering, you'd be talking about the starting lineups, you'd be excited, and it's not because the football's become stale, which many people argue. It's just because the atmosphere is just awful. It's embarrassing. It's toxic. There's just no positivity, and it's almost a drag. You get to the game. Now I'm getting to the game. Don't know about you guys, but I'm getting to the game 10 minutes before kickoff. On my own, I'll make the journey and I'll just get there. I'll say hello to my mates, and Mark made a very good point. People that have been going for years and years have been priced out. I'm just because you can afford it doesn't mean that you shouldn't campaign for things like that. I remember campaigning on that roundabout for that 3% price rise. I was there with Gavin from She War, arm in arm. It's not something that a lot of people expected me to do, but I'm very much a man of my word, and I wanted to do that because it's important. I've got friends of mine who've been priced out of the game, and you've got a football club that's got £200 million sitting in the bank, and so going to games for me is just not that much fun anymore. So yeah, it's just become. Sorry, I'm quite emotional about this. I'm quite passionate about this because I feel strongly about it. I think going to games is about having a good day out with your mates, that banter, having a pre-game drink, post-match drink, post-match debate. That's the beauty of football. It is such a passionate, such a moving sport. But we just seem to argue about the same things all the time, almost daily, almost hourly, and it's just boring.
FK, I completely agree. I mean, I remember saying to Mark a few weeks ago when we go to our new local now for the game, have lunch and whatnot, and it's the before and the after, the 90 minutes in between, almost like a chore for me. I mean, I know it sounds quite pompous to say that because I can afford to buy a ticket when it comes up and whatnot, but it really is. It's the before and after. It's meeting my mates beforehand and debating with them after, like we did after the game the other night, Mark. It's that part that really I enjoy more than the 90 minutes in between, and it's just a sad state of affairs for me. I didn't. Sorry, Eka, I didn't mean to jump in there, but I just.
No. I mean, listen. People over the last 2 or 3 days, because I was obviously happy with the one Arsene Wenger chance. There were a few people on Twitter who sort of said, "Well, you keep changing your mind." But I guess just to clarify, I mean, I'm very much in support of the manager. I'd love to see him see out his final year. There's only 2 circumstances that I would, proactively ask Wenger to step aside. One is if this divide continues to remain toxic and there's just no end goal, or there's no way that there's ever going to be a unity in the fan base, and it gets out of hand. That's unsustainable for the club. And I remember Ivan Gazidis said this 2, 3, 4 years ago, saying that only the fans can kind of decide Wenger's fate, or any manager's fate for that matter. So I would welcome, so in that scenario, I'd welcome change because I think a manager would unite the fan base. And the second scenario, I mean, people who know me closely will know that I'm a very, very big fan of Diego Simeone. I know he represents a lot of un-Arsenal things, but
like
given
winning.
the other, sorry,
like winning,
like winning, Diego Mark. But I mean, he is someone who I think would unite the fan base, and I think given all the managers that have gone on to the other Premier League clubs, if he was ever available. As much as I love Arsene Wenger, I'd be sort of first at the door to say, "Hey, look, Arsene, this is we cannot say no to this guy if he was interested." That's assuming he wants to come to London, because of course the chances are he's going to go back to Italy. But that's just the situation. And I think until the day comes when Arsene goes or whatever, it's just going to be exactly like this. Games will just be, like you say, Giles, to take your word out of your mouth, it's almost just becomes a bit of a chore. Like, you're doing it because you have to do it. There's been games this year where I've just thought, shit, I've got to go Arsenal today, and it's horrible. And it's it is a combination of a lot of things. That sense of apathy once you're out of the league, that sense of boredom because the atmosphere is stale and the football is going to be predictable. You're going to play the same type of football and maybe end up winning 1 or 2-0 or just draw 1-1. That sticking around in third, fourth. It has, I mean, you've raised your expectations because of such a high level of consistency, and all these other fans. I've seen so many. I get so many fans who tweet me saying, "Oh, you're spoiled. All your fans are embarrassing." But do you know what? It's none of their business. I mean, I want Arsenal to be successful, and I won't do certain things that some fans do. But if I have to moan, if I have to criticise, the manager's not immune to criticism just because he's been there for 19 years. But there has to be a limit, and it has to be done respectfully. But I might sound like a spoiled git by saying I'd love Arsenal to win the league this year, and I know there's only one trophy to win, one Premier League title to give out. But it's none. It's not their business, so I just don't worry about that. But yeah, it's becoming horrible. What can I say, Giles? It's not nice.
Mark?
No, I think FK's spot on with many of his points there. On the subject of Simeone, could you see Simeone working for Kroenke, or Kroenke employing someone like Simeone?
I don't think he'd ever come. I mean, he's written in his book, Mark, that he wants to go back to Italy and manage Lazio into Milan. He's going to Inter Milan. There's no doubt in that. But just from the point of view of the personalities, it's kind of like I just can't. It's just not a match for me. That's one of the biggest worries for me, and that's why I think I'd really love it if we could get to a point where at the stage where Kroenke thinks, you know what, this isn't worth the trouble. I've used Arsenal as I wanted to. I've had all that cash in the bank to help me with the loans that I needed to move the Rams from St. Louis back to LA. This is how much he cares about his sporting clubs, and he decides that while Arsene Wenger is still manager,
he'll get the best share price that he can, and he'll sell to Usmanov, because I think Usmanov's just there waiting. Yeah, but you're right, mate. It's Groundhog Day. What Giles said. That's why, predominantly driving. I'm just bored. I'm fed up with it. And I know people will say, well, then, why are you on Twitter all the time? It's because I just can't let it go. Because I want to get it changed, because I'm fed up of the same thing happening all the time. I'm just so bored of it that I have to try and do whatever I can to in whatever small way I can, to try and change it and make it exciting again. Get back to the days when going to Arsenal was bloody exciting, rather than now it's a 90-minute inconvenience that breaks up the actual social part of the day.
Yeah.
Mark, on that point,
go on, mate.
Sorry, can I just ask, and Giles, you might have wanted to ask this question anyway, but from your own point of view, or maybe as a representative of those who protested, is there anything Arsene Wenger can do that would get you back on side, apart from walk away?
If the man suddenly started having a team that competed full on, for a season, and had us properly challenging for the title, if we could see that he was investing in the level of players that we needed, if we could see that he was learning that we sometimes need different tactics for different opponents, if we could see that his substitutions made sense, if we could see that he wasn't running players into the ground and causing them to get injured, which then leaves us short, i.e. when we lost Cthulhu and Alexis at that point, and then Coquelin. If I could see those things happening, I'd believe. But that's the reason why I don't believe, is that I haven't seen him doing it for a number of years, and that's why I do not believe he can do it now, and that's why I'm where I'm at. So it's like, of course I would support any manager who comes in and does a great job and gets us to compete, but it's just not going to be him. Not in my opinion. It's not going to be Arsene Wenger.
I tell you guys, I had a question. It was just one question actually, and it comes from @PowerSpying1, and he asked, why do people blame Kroenke for the failures on the pitch? He's not the manager. So, FK, let's spin the question back to you. What do you think? Do you agree with Mark's answers to your question, or do you think there's something, do you think it's something that he can't, is unable to do? Because that's part of the reason why it's so stale, and part of the reason why people want change. Because for 12 years, we've never really challenged. There's 4 occasions. The fourth occasion where we've been fourth, or on the third occasion we've been first. At the turn of the year, and we've let it slip away. This is the fourth season where we've had a chance of doing something, and come end of March, April, we're out of it. So what do you think? I mean, you say you're pro Arsene. What could he do that would make you think, yes, this is the reason why I support him. This is the reason why I'm pro Arsenal.
There's a lot of things. Okay, so first of all, with regards to running the club, Stan Kroenke obviously owns the club. His job is to make sure that we are running efficiently, obviously generating revenue, increasing fan base, have the latest, technology, latest training facilities, latest stadium, all that kind of stuff. And from that respect, you have to say that he's not done a bad job. It could be better.
Tell you what, FK, you look at the medical centre, you look at the training facilities that we're revamping again, you look at the stat DNA. On that side of things, we're actually not bad. We're not as advanced as Man City, but we're not,
As an owner, I'm not, there's not much that I could criticise him for, apart from obviously not disclosing the reasons for the £3 million payments that go out to KSC, and of course the lack of transparency in terms of, is Stan Kroenke really a very hungry owner for success? For him to come out and say that I didn't buy Arsenal to win trophies, that's a bit of an odd admission to make during a very sensitive time for the fan base. With regards to on the pitch stuff, you might be surprised here, but Arsene Wenger has to take all responsibility for this season. It's virtually impossible to defend him. I mean, I didn't think we'd win the league this year, but there are lots of people who are actually Wenger out, if you don't mind, who thought we would win the league, thereby suggesting that they felt that we had the squad and the depth and the quality to do so. But the spectacular collapse since January the 2nd or whatever it was has got to be down to the manager, because even he admitted in the press conference last week, saying that Stan Kroenke gives me full freedom to buy whoever I want to buy, and gives me full support, blah blah blah. Therefore, dispelling any uncertainty that it's the board holding back Wenger. So Wenger's basically admitted that it's all down to him. Football wise, Mark's hit the nail on the head, and I've talked about it. Arsene Wenger seems to have the same traits, the same sort of flaws, tactical naivety in certain games, who runs players into the ground and doesn't rotate as much as he perhaps should, which is very easy to say in hindsight. But actually, there's one thing that is for sure at Arsenal, right? Injury problems we've always struggled with for years and years and years. What he needs to do is to realise that Jack Wilshere, you probably, even though he's fit now, I can tell you right now that next year we're probably going to get 10 games out of Jack Wilshere. I can tell you right now that Ramsey's going to go missing for 2 or 3 months. I can tell you right now that Cazorla is probably going to pick up another knock, that Arteta, Flamini and Rosicky are going to contribute less than 30% of games next year. Now, whether you like that or not, whether you love those players or not, they are taking up positions in the squad, and Arsene Wenger needs to realise that if in that situation we have those injuries, we need to have players to come in that can replace them. And there's no point saying, well, what do we do when they're all fit? Because the reality is they're going to be fit maybe 2-3 weekends in an entire year. So there's that. There's, it's pretty much what Mark said. Having a different approach to certain games, being more open to adding more senior players that can actually help the squad, and not just rely on players being fit, because it's never going to happen. Not running players into the ground. So, being a bit stronger with your individuals. I don't know whether he just plays Sanchez every game because he wants to keep him happy, but there's got to come a point. Alexis Sanchez has played 70, 80 games in the space of any 12-month rolling period. So Arsene Wenger's got to say, well, look, even though he's as fit as Alexis Sanchez is, to do the Copa America and to do 2 Premier League campaigns back to back, you're asking for trouble. It doesn't matter if he wants to play. All players are always going to say to you, yeah, boss, I want to play, I want to play, I want to play. But common sense should prevail and say, well, look, if you're playing 5 or 6 games on the spin, rotate him every 7th or 8th game. There are, we should have a squad strong enough, and in the longer term, that keeps your players fresher. So there's little things like that, but question remains. I can't see him changing his approach to tactics or substitutions. I can see him spending money. But then begs another question: if it's his final year next year, A, how does he convince new signings to come in and say, I'll be the boss for the next 2-3 years, this is my project? And B, should the club even allow him to spend £100 million, just as plucking a number out of the air? Because should the new manager not be allowed to to spend that money? I don't know. There's a lot of questions, but from a sentimental point of view, and from the fact that I don't think there's any ready-made replacements out there tomorrow that are happy to join, I'd like to see Wenger see out his last year of his contract, and I hope it's his last year, because 20 years, that's it, good stint. Let's let's start again. Hello.
Good Mark.
Yeah,
Put you to sleep. Sorry, go on.
No. I just wanted to make one final point on the protest, Giles, because obviously there was a lot of publicity around it, and there was a lot of publicity around one particular incident which did happen on the Bear Roundabout where we met beforehand, and it involved sort of a point where the Thanks for the Memories banner was out, and there was a song being sung about Arsene Wenger, and it's a song that normally I believe is just said about they'll be happy when he goes in May. And I think it's one particular video that got taken. You could hear the song being sung, and as it kind of tailed off and got to the end bit, you can hear not many, a couple of people singing a thing about him dying in May. Right now, not many is not an excuse. Yeah, one person doing it is one person too many, in my opinion. So what I'd like to say is that is unacceptable behaviour. I know that as I said earlier, it's football. It's near enough 5 o'clock on a day when people have probably been down the pub a lot, and we know what football fans are like. We can all sing songs that are probably inappropriate, but that one is definitely unacceptable. Whatever anyone in any of the fan groups believes about Arsene Wenger and his position at the club as manager, there is no way that any of us would wish any harm on the man. Yeah, he's done a lot for this club, But just because we think it's time for him to go, we would never wish that. And if you're one of the 2 or 3 people that might have sung that, you should be ashamed of yourself, mate. And the other thing you need to realise is that when you're trying to protest and you're trying to get to change people's mind and get them to join in a protest that says it's time for change, doing something like that is just absolutely sets everything back, because now we all get tarred with the same brush. The whole thing about if you want Wenger gone, you're the sort of person that sings you want him to die. All of us will get tarred with that brush, because it's easy for people to do that, because it maybe it suits them to say that. So if you're one of those people who did that, one, you should be ashamed of yourself. 2, try and be a bit smarter. You want Wenger out. You're not going to get Wenger out by doing stupid things like that. But you should be ashamed of yourself for behaving like that, because it's wrong. There's no excuse for it. You're an idiot if you're saying that.
I think that's very well said, Mark. Thankfully, I didn't get to the roundabout in time to hear that.
Giles, can I just shout out Mems? I don't know if if he listens to this, but
he will be.
I like Mems a lot. I mean, I sort of, away from Twitter, he's such a nice guy when you meet him in person.
Absolutely.
And I've often DM'd him about this. He's just a massive dick on Twitter sometimes, and he knows that he makes a complete tit of himself. But he did a recent interview on Arsenal Fan TV, and I thought he did the protest sort of team a lot of good. He spoke about it in a very classy and respectful way. And I think just echoing Mark's comments there, I think any individuals who go off effing and blinding and you're all deluded minions and all, using that kind of language, you're just alienating people, and you're not trying, you're not influencing people in the right way. So you just need to be sensible about it. Keep protesting. If that's your opinion, that's fine. But you don't have to go off on one with people who just disagree with you. And don't think that just because people aren't protesting, they don't want the club to be successful, because that's just completely naive and ignorant.
Absolutely. I agree with both your points on that score. I think it really does undermine the movement when you get idiots singing that sort of nonsense, trying that kind of nonsense and fighting and whatnot. And I'm sure Mark would, and all the guys that organise it would like to thank people like Mems for doing their bit. I mean, he's given a bad rap on social media, but I tell you what, in person, when you meet him in person, he's a top fella. Absolutely top bloke. Yeah,
I'd just like to give him my personal thanks, because he, as you say, he has, people do give him a hard time and that, and Mems knows I always say that sometimes he deserves it, and I tell him that, but he helped out with it on Saturday. And when there are people who talk a lot and then don't turn up for anything like this, but Mems actually, he made sure he came down, he went to the game, he got other people involved, so he comes out of this with a lot of credit, and other people who dig him out but want change but do nothing. Really, what are you doing? Actually, you're digging him out, but you're not really helping, whereas this guy is at least doing something to try and help. So
what it is, Mark? It's one-upmanship. I talked about it earlier. It's just about people trying to get retweets, so they try and hang people out to dry, and they try and get a laugh out of it, but it's just poor behaviour.
Yeah.
Okay, I think it's a good point to come to a conclusion. I don't know what you people think. The whole of you two people that we listen to this podcast, but I don't know if we've sort of cleared the air somewhat, or giving you some sort of indication as to why it happened and the direction and the reasons for it. But I want to thank you all for listening. I want to thank Mark for coming on today. Thank you very much, sir.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
And you also, FK, thank you very much indeed for jumping on and joining us today.
Thanks, man. No pleasure. One nice Wenger. You can cut it there. I'm kidding.
Mark's probably kicking the cat right now. Yeah. All right, so you can catch us on all the platforms. Watch out for our post-game pod as well. We didn't bring it out yesterday or this morning, but it will be coming out later, so watch out for that part one. All right, so that's the Gooner Ramble podcast. I've been your host, Giles. Thanks for listening, and up the Arsenal.